For your bow drill kit, you need two main pieces as well as a bow, and the spindle and the fireboard are the two most important sections. You want the spindle to be thinner than what the fireboard comes from, because we're going to essentially drill these two together, and as you can see, this actually has ice on it, so this kind of proves to you that this technique can be done in any conditions. But I'm going to process this up, make a flat board, and then I'm going to thin my spindle out and get this exterior bark and any moisture off of it so that I can have my spindle. And when the two drill together, they will essentially pump out a nice fine black dust that will turn into a cherry, and then we can load that cherry into our tinder bundle. It's very important that you pick very dead, well-seasoned wood. And, you know, by using a fireboard or taking a stick that is slightly larger, we can carve down a little bit deeper into the wood where it's sure to be dry. And so all I'm doing right now is cleaning these edges up, getting any residual moisture and wood that might have any dampness to it off. And then I'm going to clean the lines up and get this down to, maybe 3/8 of an inch thick to 5/8 of an inch. And the size of your board is extremely important. If it's too big, it won't work. And if it's too thin, you'll drill through it. The next part of the bow drill kit that we need is a handhold, and it's very important that preferably you choose a handhold from a hardwood. Now, you can use almost anything, but a hardwood is going to prevent the spindle from drilling up into your hand and creating excess friction there. So if we can choose something hard, that's going to make the bow drill that much easier for us. And this is oak, but any type of hardwood would work. And we want it to be, you know, hang 10 plus 2, or hang 10 is kind of a universal length. We're going to cut just a little bit short of that for our handhold, something that easily fits in our palm. And if you don't have a handy saw, this can easily be done by taking your knife and another larger stick and batoning it, or you can wedge these trees in between another tree and break it. All right, so our handhold has got a fair amount of ice on it, so we're just going to knock that off so that it doesn't end up dripping down into our kit if it gets hot. And then once we get it cleaned up, we'll take and make a small divot just off to one side with the tip of our blade. And you don't want it very deep, but you want it deep enough to where the spindle will easily sit in it without flipping out. After you get your handhold, your fireboard, and your spindle completed, then you're going to need to make a bow. And we found a convenient one here that's got a Y in the end of it. And I'm going to cut this about armpit to palm length. Trim the limbs off. You'll notice the length of it here. Could do a little shorter. For women, you typically want something a little shorter, especially if you have low forearm strength. If you have good forearm strength, a longer bow is a little bit easier to get a coal with, just because of the length of the strokes that you get. So we'll clean this up and put a string on it. The interesting thing about bow drill fire is, assuming that you get it, you will actually get warm twice, because not only are you going to be able to make a fire from it, it's also pretty good exercise in the meantime before you end up getting a coal. If you do find yourself stuck out in cold weather, our drill sergeants in the military, they always used to tell us there's no excuse for being cold. Start doing push-ups, soldier. So if you do find yourself to where you're getting hypothermic, start banging out those push-ups. Get your core temperature heated back up to where you won't start to lose dexterity in your fingers, because once your body core gets to a certain temperature, you will actually lose the ability to do these skills. I mean, you get cold enough, you won't even be able to flick your Bic lighter correctly. So it's very important that you stay warm and you realize the temperatures that are around you, so that you don't let your core temperature get low enough to where you can't function in order to reproduce these skills. With your bow, you want to make sure that it's got a slight curve in it. Looking at it from this angle, you don't want to choose a tree limb that will jog off to the left or to the right. That makes a big difference and will actually create wobble in your bow when you're doing it. So we conveniently found one that had a Y-stick at the end, so we don't need to make a notch here. But on this end, we've got to make a notch so that we can attach our string to it. And you can do this with your knife. It just takes longer. And I really can't emphasize enough just how important having a folding saw is for any kind of bushcraft or survival purposes. It's more efficient than an axe. It does a lot more skills that an axe can't do. And while I am carrying an axe on me, if I had to choose between the two, I would always choose my saw over my axe. And now we'll just attach our string. One of the reasons that the bow drill is such an important skill set is because you're almost never going to find a scenario where you find yourself without some string or some shoelaces on you. And one of the things that I do with all my different boots and tennis shoes is I replace them with paracord. And as long as you have paracord or some type of string, you can always get fire. The next thing that we've got to do is tie our cord on. And don't worry about getting fancy with knots. In survival, knots is a luxury. And one of my sayings is, if you can't tie a knot, tie a lot. And I've almost found no situation where an overhand knot won't work for me for stuff like this. So on one side, we want to tie a permanent knot, being like an overhand knot or a square knot. And then on the other side, we want to do just kind of a basic hitch knot. And we'll just wrap it over itself and then run it back up under the cord, because the paracord will tend to loosen on you. So you want to have this side adjustable so that you can easily take it off and tighten it up if need be. Something important to remember is the overall tightness of your string. You want to be able to get it in there, obviously, but when you actually sink the spindle into the string, and you want it always on the outside of the string, not to the inside facing the bow, when you let this go, it should fling out quickly on its own.